And then now we can now move to the second part, which is focusing on life tables. And so life tables are going to apply the concepts that we've just covered, especially the age and sex-specific mortality rate. So let's talk about what are life tables. So life tables were introduced around the 17th century, and they were used to study patterns of mortality based on church burial records. And the person who introduced them for the first time was John Graunt. And they're used in many fields. Demography, they originated from demography, and then they're also used in epidemiology, clinical trials, actuarial science, but also health economics. And in health economics, we can use life tables to project survival, estimate life years, which will be the focus for today. We can also use them to calculate disability-adjusted life years and also quality-adjusted life years. But you need to bring in other measures like utility and disability weights. And how to use life tables to calculate life expectancy and life years gain due to an intervention is what we're going to focus on in this mini lecture. So let's look at a life table. So a life table is a table which shows for each age or age groups the probability that a person of that age will die before their next birthday, meaning that this is just the probability of death. And there are two types of life tables. So the first one is called a cohort life table, which follows an actual birth cohort. And these life tables are mostly used for insects and other animals, rarely used for humans, because it's very hard to follow a full cohort of humans from when they're born until they die. So for humans, we use another kind of life table, which has several names. It's called period, current, or static life table. And this is constructed from cross-sectional mortality data that could come from sensors or from surveys or from many different kinds of studies. And these are usually available in most national bureaus of statistics for countries. And then the life tables can take several structures. So we can either have what we call a full life table, where we have single year age groups, and then we can have what we call a bridge life table, where we have n year age intervals. So normally we have like the n there normally is 5, like we have 5-year age intervals. And we're going to look at examples of both types. So in this slide, we are looking at a UK life table based on data from 2008 to 2010. And there are several components now of a life table. The first one you can see, we have the first column which indicates the age, and that arrow shows here we have the age, that is the first column. And this is the full life table, but it's just a section up to 19 years. So you have 0, 1, 2, 3, and so forth. And then we have the next bit, which is the probability of death, QX. This is normally derived from mortality in age and sex specific. And you can see this life table has one section is for males, the other section is for females. So these mortality rates that you're looking at are the age and sex specific mortality rate that we discussed, but they can easily be converted to QX, which is the probability of death. And this is the conditional probability that an individual will die between age X and age X plus 1. There is QX, and then we also have the number alive. This is the exact number of individuals alive at each age, and this is we normally have a starting point, which we call the radix, and I'm going to show you that in a moment. But this is LX. These are the number of people who have survived. And so initial population size is also called radix. So at age 0, we start with a number, arbitrary number. So you may decide to say 1,000 or 100,000. Normally we start with 100,000, so that we have like numbers that are not very small decimals on the death. So you can see there we have the initial population or the radix. And then we also have deaths. So this is the number of individuals dying within each age interval, and this is calculated by taking the multiple of QX and LX, so you get DX. So this is a very good example of a life table. And then you can continue constructing by subtracting as you go downwards. So to get this number here, how many people will remain in the next age group, you take this number, you subtract this number, so you'll get the number here. And then to get this one, you'll take this number minus this number, you get the next one, and so forth until you construct a full life table. Yeah, so once you have the mortality rates, you can easily construct the life table. Once you have the probability of death, or QX, you can easily construct a life table. We're going to look at the next metrics. So in other life tables, they show more details. We have what we call number of years lived. So this is the number of years lived by the cohort within the interval x and x plus 1, and we can see this here. So this is the total number of years, this is the number of years lived. And then from there we can also get what we call total time lived. So total time lived is the summation of, is the total number of years lived beyond age x. So you sum up all the numbers below age x, all the L1s, all the L's, you'll get this number. And then for this one, you'll sum up all the numbers below, you'll get this one. And you go on and you go on. And we are now very close to calculating a life expectancy. So this is what we call TX, the total time lived. And then from there we have now the metrics of interest, which is life expectancy. This is the average number of additional years an individual is expected to live. And this is easily calculated from a life table by taking TX divided by LX. So to get the life expectancy for individuals with age 0, in this, so you'll take you'll take this number divided by this number, so you'll get a 62. And this is a life table from Tanzania based on 2022 data. Yeah, so each age group you'll get a certain life expectancy, and this is different from the one that we've seen. This is a bridge life table because we have age 0 is normally unique, so it stands alone, and then because we have a very high mortality rate at age 0, there is a high risk of dying for newborn babies, and especially for LMICs like Tanzania. And then when you move to age 1, the probability of death decreases and it keeps on decreasing. But then when you go to older ages, it starts to increase again. Yeah. So this is 1 to 5, 10, 15. This is 5-year age groups. Yeah, so that's a life table, and that's how we use a life table to calculate life expectancy. And then now, since we have already established how to calculate life expectancy based on all-cause mortality, so now we're going to look at a very important concept, like how can we use now life tables to calculate the changes in life expectancy. So life tables are a useful tool for estimating changes in life expectancy, especially when you have an intervention that acts directly on mortality or it reduces mortality. And you need to make some assumptions on how the interventions impact hazard. So this normally comes from clinical trials or cohort studies or meta-analysis. And then, yeah, so the hazard can either be shifted upward or downward. So if it's shifted downwards, it means that an intervention has positive effects. And then if it's shifted upward, normally this is when someone, maybe they have a disease, their probability of death increases. So the hazard there is normally, it goes up. So for example, an intervention if an intervention alters the hazard rate of all-cause mortality, then you will have that equation. H dash equals to the hazard ratio multiplied by H. And then, yeah, so the change in hazard will alter all-cause mortality rate, or it can also, mortality rate or probability of death, they are derivatives of each other, which in turn changes the rest of the quantities in the life table, including EX. As we have seen, like all the columns in the life table are linked to each other. So if you change the first column, which is the mortality rate or the probability of death, it means you can alter all the other elements of a life table. And we're going to see an example of that. So for example, consider a clinical trial that has been conducted in a period of 5 years, and in which an intervention significantly reduced the risk ratio of mortality for older ages, for individuals, for men aged 80 to 84 years by 50% relative to the control group. So what will happen? So while reporting, when we are working with risk ratios, for example, in clinical studies, we extract a lot of meaning from them. But when we are doing economic evaluations, we are more interested on life expectancy as a measure for calculating effectiveness. So that's why we don't end up just getting the risk ratio. Like if you are doing a clinical study, getting a risk reduction of 50%, that would have been a very important information. But for economic evaluation, we need to move a step further. We need to see how does that impact life expectancy. So with that, you will have, so in order to calculate the changes in life expectancy, you will have a life table, and you can construct a life table for a very specific age group. As we can see here, we have this life table. It starts from age 80, and then this is just QX, without intervention, LX without intervention, capital LX without intervention, TX, and then EX, which is the life expectancy. So we see before an intervention, an individual had life expectancy of 7.38. But this other side, it shows life expectancy or the life table after intervention. And let's see now how the intervention would affect the hazard. So we see the initial hazard was around 0.074. But now, because we've said there's a 50% reduction, so we multiply by 0.5, we'll get a half of that, so which will be 0.03. So we see now the hazard has been reduced to a half because of the intervention. And then that is the life expectancy before the intervention, 7.38, but now we've seen the life expectancy has gone up to 8.74 after the intervention. And if you want to calculate the change in life expectancy because of the intervention, it's very straightforward. So life years gain at age 80 because of this intervention will be 8.74 minus 7.38, and you'll get a life gain of 1.36 years. But one important note is that this intervention only has an impact from age 80 to 84. So if you look at life expectancy before intervention up to age 84, it's 5.72, and then this has now increased to 6.03. But for the rest of the ages, like 86 and downwards, there is no impact. The intervention does not have an impact because the trial lasted only for 5 years. So we were only able to observe this time. So here we don't have any changes in life expectancy. And then from there, yeah, so we can see now if you plot a graph of LX against age, starting from age 80, and then this is before the intervention, and then this is after the intervention. So we've seen that because of the intervention, the shape of the curve has shifted. So, and this is like the reduction in mortality has happened because of, the increase in life expectancy has happened because of, it's been driven by two factors. The first factor is the reduction in mortality observed during the 5 years of the trial and the ongoing period, because like after the trial, these people will continue to survive. So we will have a greater number of people who are alive in the intervention arm at the end of the trial, meaning that because of this, so you see this shift, that means these are the two factors that do contribute to the change in life expectancy. And then the gray shaded area represent the additional number of survivors in the intervention group at each age. So we see there are more people, until you reach age 100, which was the last. So some key takeaways from this main lecture are life tables quantify age-specific mortality and survival, and we can use them as a foundation for calculating life expectancy, DALYs, QALYs, and in this lecture we have seen how we can use them for the calculation of life expectancy, and they're also very essential for modeling of for long-term modeling in health economics. If you want to model effects over a long period of time, let's say 5 years, 10 years, you can start from life tables, and then by applying other projection models, you can take it from there. And then we have seen also the way that we adjust the population mortality rate by using hazard ratios. So we take the hazard ratio, and then we multiply by mortality rate, we'll get a reduced mortality rate, and then that will be the basis for getting a reduction in a change in life expectancy due to that particular intervention. And we have seen that the life tables can be extended to understand the impact of diseases and interventions in life expectancy. Yeah, and these are the two good references I would recommend for you to go and check out. So the life tables and exploration from the book of Applied Methods of Economic Analysis in Health, and also Demographic Fundamentals from the Demographic Methods book. Yeah, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you've learned something from this mini lecture.